Okay, in today's session, we'll start with the purchasing setups. After completing the purchasing setups, what are the process flow we have based on purchasing transaction? We'll be testing inventory related concepts also, which are pending. Okay, there are concepts which we cannot test directly within the inventory without initiating the procurement process. Those scenarios and whatever other concepts are left within the inventory will be covering along with this integration flows. After completing purchasing, we'll start with the payables and we can run through the complete P2P cycle. So first we'll see the basic setups which are required within the purchasing. After completing the basic setups, we'll talk about what are the concepts we have within the purchasing and the purpose, and we'll start working on one by one. First we'll see the basic setups within the purchasing. Basic setups in purchasing. So PO. So if you compare with EBS, in EBS as a part of purchasing, we set up financial options and purchasing options. So here equal to purchasing options. Here the purchasing options and the requisition. In case of EBS, the purchasing options will help us to set the control on purchasing related process along with the requisition process. But in the Fusion, the purchasing related controls and requisition related controls we can manage separately. It's not a common setup, so we have a individual task to manage that areas of controls or defaults. First we'll go through the setup part, then we'll discuss and we'll proceed. So to complete the purchasing configuration, first we have to complete, say, configure procurement business functions. I think they give a name as function, reality functions. And we have to configure requisition business functions also. So configure sorry so we have to set up the requisitioning business functions, and we have to configure common options. We'll talk on these setups also by comparing with the EBS, or what is the purpose of each and every setup. So common options for payables and procurement. Then we have to set up receiving options. This receiving options we configured as a part of inventory setups also, but these are not really required if you are not implemented purchasing module. If you implement the purchasing module based on the process flow which you run between these two modules integration, those options will support. If you don't implement purchasing, even if you set up receiving options for inventory, no use. So when you are implementing purchasing application, you have to make sure that the receiving options are configured for specific inventory organization. Say set up or configure. Set up receiving options, and we have to create the procurement agent also. So create procurement agent, and after creating the procurement agent, we can create the supplier. If you want to create the supplier, you have to assign the role to this user. Say assign supplier role to user. So which role we have to assign? To allow any user to create the suppliers, we have a role called as supplier manager. We have to assign the role called as supplier manager to the user so that the user can create the suppliers. And we'll discuss there are relevant points which you have to understand before we do in the system. We'll discuss and we'll proceed. So once the user get the permissions to perform this, the user can create the supplier. Before we go and create the supplier, we have to make sure that the numbering we already defined in the system. Say specify supplier numbering or supplier sequencing. Okay, we have to set up the supplier numbering. After setting up supplier numbering, then system will allow us to create the supplier. So first we'll create the supplier profile. So let me write as create supplier. As a part of supplier definition, what are the different steps we execute? First we'll create the supplier profile and address and site assignments. So along with this we can create the contacts and etc. Those also will be adding, but as a standard definition of supplier, this is a areas of information is required. Done. So after testing supplier creation through manual process, we'll test how to load the supplier's data. We tested how to load the item master information in inventory. In the same way, as a part of data conversion, how we can load the suppliers into system by following the FPDI process. Say load suppliers using FPDI process, nothing but supplier conversion. We'll test this process. So after completing that, we have to create PO tab. Okay, PO tab stands for PO stands for purchasing, tab stands for transaction accounting builder. Okay, this you can call as transaction accounting definition also. Ideally we use the term called as a tab, which refers transaction accounting builder, but when you create in the system you could see that as a transaction accounting definition, but we don't call it as tab, we call it as tab, PO tab. Okay, I'm just listing out the setups which we need to be executed, and we'll discuss the purpose of each and every setup. So once we're done with that, as a part of this PO tab, there are multiple tasks which we have to perform that we'll discuss detail level once we start working on it. So once we're done with that, we set up requisition approvals, set up requisition approvals and the purchasing approvals also. So set up purchasing approvals for purchase order. Okay, we'll set the approval, or else let's write it as a purchasing document approvals. Okay, PO related approvals, and there itself will create the approvals, and within that we'll define the approval rules. We'll discuss and we'll work on it. And once we're done with this basic setups, we can start with the purchasing application. Depending on the concepts which we are going to test, we'll do the required configuration and we'll proceed, but these would be the basic setups. So once we're done with the setups, to have access to purchasing application to record the transactions, we have to assign the required roles to the user. say assign purchasing roles to user. Okay, to work on purchasing application functionality, what are the roles required will assign to the user. After assigning the roles to the user, for the same roles we have to provide the data access. When we talk about purchasing, we know the purchasing is mapped at business unit level. In case of EBS, operating unit level. So for which business unit we want to give the access to that user related roles, that we have to perform by using the task called as data access for users. Say provide data access for users. Once we're done with that, we have to submit the role synchronization program, which we call as LDAP. Submit LDAP job. That's all. Okay, these are very basic setups which you have to complete to start with the purchasing. After completing this, we can test the cycle, which will get connected with the inventory application, and will work on purchasing application, the complete functionality whatever we have. And whatever just we left with a few functions, few concepts within the inventory, those also will cover along with this module. Okay, this is what we are going to do. So when you talk about the first task, configure procurement business function, this you can compare. If you compare with EBS, this setup is equal to purchasing options. Okay, so in case of EBS we have a purchasing options. So what is the use of this setup? With this setup, you can specify how your procurement process related control should work, or else how you want to set default information in your procurement process. They given this task which is for entire procurement. Okay, so within the procurement, one of the module is purchasing. Even if you want to work on any one of the procurement related module or purchasing module, this setup is mandatory. Okay, it's not just for purchasing application, it's for entire procurement, but majorly we can just set up for purchasing application what controls we required within that. Okay, so we'll go and see. So just we'll go and provide the mandatory information over there. When you are working on the relevant concepts, we'll just come back to these setups and we'll give the specifications and we'll work accordingly. So first we have to configure procurement business functions. Procurement business function. If you want to set up this, you have to make sure that our business unit level we enable procurement business function. If you don't enable at business unit level, okay, we have a task called as assign business unit business functions. So as a part of this BU definition, we did it right here, this task. Assign business unit business functions. Here what we did, for our business unit, what are the business functions required? Those business functions we assign to our BU. In our case, we assigned all the business functions to our business unit. So to do the purchasing configuration, make sure that you already enable procurement and requisition business functions at BU level. Else we'll just go through that step also. Already we completed. So we'll just look at that configuration, then we'll proceed with these setups. Go to our project. So task is assign business unit business function. To select our business unit to verify which which are the business functions already assigned. Select, say save and close. If you look at our business unit associated business functions, we could see business functions called as procurement and requisition. So if you just assign this business function, then only system will allow us to complete the relevant setups for our business unit. Anyway, those are enabled, so that system will allow us to perform the relevant configuration for our BU. Done. So the first task is configure procurement business function. Search for procurement business function. So task name is configure procurement business function. We see most of the tasks which starts with manage, but very few tasks the prefix would be different, like specify, configure, or create. Okay, just click on this task and select business unit here. Just click on go to task icon. Okay, procurement BU. Which business unit is procurement BU? For which BU we assign procurement business function, that BU will become procurement BU. So since we enable procurement business function to our BU you can find in this list. If we don't find our BU in this list, we have to understand for RBU procurement business function is not assigned. Fine. So here is RBU, ERP3 US business unit. Select and say OK. Set all these defaults. Okay, when you are working on this procurement process or say or primarily core purchasing process, which information need to be defaulted. Okay, set payment terms, so immediate payment terms, and the other shipping methods and all. This is not required now. When we are working on relevant process, we'll see. And you just map inventory organization. So in case of EBS, this inventory organization mapping with BU will do through financial options. Within the financial options, we specify the inventory organization so that when we are going to perform the purchasing related, say purchase order or requisition, we will be able to have access to the items which inventory is associated with that operating unit in case of EBS. But here, so equal to financial options, we have a common options, but the common options level there is no option to specify inventory organization that they move to this procurement business function, which is equal to purchasing options. So select inventory organization, so which in this BU is going to have access to which inventory related items. So our BU name is inventory organization name is ERP3. We have a two inventory organizations other than master. So I'm selecting dollars inventory. So when you are creating the purchase document, which line type system has to default, those we may select the optional information line type. Let system default goods. So within this business unit, we'll record the primary most of the transactions in which currency, most of the documents in which currency that you can specify, and other purchasing document can be in how many megabytes size and all those you can give the specifications, and what is the match approval levels, two-way, three-way, four-way. Let it be three-way. When we are going to work on this payables application will change and will work accordingly. So other information you could see as that is a default information. But anyway, when we are working on the relevant concepts, we'll just come back to this page and we'll specify and we'll proceed accordingly. So along with this information, and one more point here, you may specify the buyer. If somebody is going to create any procurement related documents for this business unit, if you want to default buyer also, ideally what system will do? So from which user you are creating the documents, that user it will take as a buyer if the user is classified as a buyer. Apart from that, you have an option to set default buyer for this specific business unit through these options. Okay, fine. So along with this, we have a document section, document types, where we can set up the formats, layouts and all. So when we are going to print, okay, since this is a complete procurement, not only just purchasing, complete procurement, so we have all these different documents. So auctions and agreements, contracts, purchase orders, RFI, RFQ, for all these. So when you are going to print, we have to assign the required layout so that accordingly system will print the relevant document related information. So these are the default layouts Oracle is providing. If you take like blanket purchase agreement, for this Oracle is providing this document layout. It's a seeded one. The same way if you go with a contract purchase agreement, here whatever you see, those all are seeded. But as per business, definitely these need to be modified. So ideally these document layouts, the technical guy can do it who has some experience in the XML and all. So they can modify it, but where we can find these documents, from how to download, how to just once you download you can just share or you can explain to the technical guy who can modify it. Once the modification is done, how to upload into the application, how we can select, here we'll see that point. Okay, so here we have a documents. I'm just opening the instance in the different tab. So this document, say here we have a purchase order document, purchase order. So when you create the purchase order, to print that purchase order information, we require specific layout format. But here whatever Oracle is providing, that is a standard or say seeded layout, which ideally we change for each and every client. If you want to change, where we can find these seeded layouts in the Fusion environment. Okay, not only this, any documents where we can find in the Fusion environment. So how to just how to manage with those documents, the modifications and all we cannot do. Who has just the XML expertise, they can do it. So we'll see that process where we can find how we can manage once we get ready those modified document in that environment, how those can be selected from the same page for as per our preference, those will go through. Fine. So this is our instance URL, okay, up to oracledemos.com. So remove rest of URL. Now we are going to see how to navigate to that layout environment. Okay, how to navigate to that layout environment. If you want to go to that layout page, so after instance URL, just provide slash, then search for, just you can enter the path or some page direction as a write in the small character, small letters, not uppercase, lower case, XML. Okay, so because these are going to be XML layouts formats, and type P means XML publisher, P server. So now it will take us to that specific page from where we can find out the seeded layouts. If you want to modify, how to create, how to modify, or else how to create altogether new documents, new layouts. So after instance URL, okay, you provide slash and XMLP server, you have to type, enter. Now it will redirect to XML publisher. page. Okay, once we land in this page, what you can do is go to catalogs. Just click on catalog tab, and here you could see two different type of folders: my folders and the shared folders. My folders are specific to user. Okay, if you place something in this my folders, that can be accessed by only the current user, which user is placing the documents within the my folders. So those can be accessed by only ERP-tree user. And if you do any changes, or if you place any documents, or if you create any new layouts or anything within these shared folders, so those can be accessed by everyone. Now just we look at those layouts where the layouts are available. Under shared folders, scroll little down, go to procurement section, procurement folder. Here is the procurement folder. You expand it. Within this procurement folder, we have a purchasing as a subfolder. Click on purchasing. Now related to our purchasing application, our purchasing process, what are the different seeded layouts you can see here? That the different seeded layouts for report, like a purchasing document. When you create purchasing document, so we'll create the report. System will generate the output. For that, what report we have, for that what layout already available, the all the details you can see. These are all related to different reports with respect to layouts. Now let's talk about purchasing document PDF report. So if you want to modify this layout as per the client requirement, what you can do is, here we have a more option. Next to that, click on the drop down arrow option. So click on customize. So now system will make a copy of the same layout. Okay, just click on customize. Click on more, click on customize. Fine. System copied. Okay, system copied that same document here. Now purchase order layout. What you can do is, now as per process, what we have to do is, the technical guy, like the XML, who knows XML, the guy will download it by clicking on edit and just say open. Okay, by using that XML plugin within this Word, what they do is, they do all alignments. Okay, which test is required, which format required, which columns required, all they can do it, right? So this is the just a seeded format of this purchasing related document. So they'll do the modifications as per the requirement. What are the fields required? Okay, what information system has to capture when you create the purchase order? All the modifications will be done by the technical guy. Being a functional consultant, what we have to do is, we'll just get this document from the technical team, and they can place in the same path, or we can just place it. So we'll just save it. When you're saving this document, save with the RTF. Okay, RTF format. So I'm saving on the desktop, but we can give the name as ERP-tree order layout. Purchase order layout. So this is all just, they'll save in the RTF and they'll do the required modifications. Once everything is done, the next step would be the same we have to place here. How to do that? Go to view as a list and click on add. So once the modifications are done, alignments are done as per the requirement, that we can upload here. So say PO ERP3 PO layout. We didn't do any modifications now because that is not our job. Okay, we have to be good enough in the XML publisher, then only we can do the modifications within that. So now you can browse the same. Here is that layout ERP3 purchase order layout RTF. Select it. Okay, specify the type. The template type is RTF template, and local means it's a language. The localization, the language specification you have to give. So English, United States. Say upload. Okay, so we uploaded. This is the layout. This is the actual layout. So once you click on customize the copy, it will create here. The same the technical people can download and they can modify. After that they will be uploading here. And you can click on view as a list, and you can specify when you create the purchase order by you, I mean with the help of this layout, system has to create the report output in which format. You may set the default output format is PDF. Okay, default layout format PDF, done. So you can click on save. Now if you look at this setup document types, if you go with the purchase orders, already you can see one layout. What is the layout name? Purchase order layout. The same we have here, the purchase order layout. This is the layout available over there. Now we have another layout called as ERP3 PO layout. Say this is a modified one. You can select this here. 1 second. We'll save it so that it will take the updates. I will go and verify. So here we created and added thing that is modified aligned as per the requirement. The same you can select here. It's not coming. What we can do is we'll reopen. Again go to procurement business function. Select our business unit. If you enable this checkbox save value as a default, whenever you navigate to this task RBU only, system will default. Okay, go to document types. And go to purchase order. Okay, select purchase order. So here you can select the document. Only I think it is displaying only 2. Search for the document which we added over there. We didn't save or what? Saved it, right? Refresh this page. Okay, we updated I think different document. One second, let it refresh. So this is one which we created. Just you may select it as PDF and set this as a default and save it. Once again, I am just refreshing these pages. This also just will reopen because it has to sync with all the updates. So these changes what we did, that those will be running on the BI server, and again this environment will run on the different server. Everything should sync. Or else what I'll do is I'll sign out and sign in. Okay, we'll navigate to the same task. Manage implementation projects. Go to our implementation project. Task is procurement. So configure procurement business function. Now go to document types. Okay, select, and from here you can select it. One second. Start with it should display with the same name. What's wrong with this? Just one second. It's not reflecting. Whatever the document available, layout is available over there, it has to display. XMLP server. Go to catalog. Or else we'll test with this document. Okay, I mean agreement, purchase agreement. Even the purchase order also should work. So after the technical guys, their modifications and all this document need to be saved. Save it. just go to view list and place the document here, upload. Browse the template. It's RTF. Language select. And save it. Click on view as a list. So this is the one which we just placed. You can make this as a default layout and select format and save it. Done. Once you're done with this, should be available from here. If we go to document types, purchase agreement, so here it is available. Okay, ERP3 PO agreement layout. This is how just you can select. The same applicable for any type of documents. So we should aware of where we can find the seeded templates, seeded layouts, so that we can guide to the technical team if they are not aware of it, or else once they create. So based on our requirement, we can manage those all the layouts here, and we can select as per the requirement. Okay. So this is a purpose we should understand this point. So once the required layouts are available, those can be selected from here based on the respective document type. Okay, this is all about procurement business function. We'll just there are many concepts where we have to navigate to the same page to change the values or to enable the relevant functions. So for now, just try to understand. We have to complete the procurement business function by providing the basic information. The same way requisition business function. If you want to create the requisitions, so you have to complete this setup, but you don't see much information as a mandatory. Almost the data is system will default from this procurement business function. And if any information you want to modify in this stage, you can do it, or else when we are working on the requisition process, we can set up as we require. You can notice here, so which BU is which inventory organization we selected here. Dollars. Fine. So go to requisition business functions. Go to ERP3 US business unit. Say OK. And select same dollars. And the line type and those details are defaulting from the procurement business function itself. So under default procurement BU is same BU, and other information nothing is mandatory. Okay, you may set default ship to location if you want to set when you create the purchase orders and all. The ship to location system will default, or else we have a preferences set up also. There also we can specify, and we'll be working on the other controls which are applicable depending on the feature which we'll be testing. Okay, so in this stage nothing is mandatory here, but just navigate and go through the information. Done. So that's all about just setting up procurement business functions and requisition business functions. Now we'll see common options for payables and procurement. So which are financial options in EBS. In EBS, we have a financial options which are shared across payables and purchasing. So the naming convention we could see in EBS as a financial options, but those same can be used in the payables and purchasing. That is the reason in Fusion they are given as the options which are common for payables and procurement. Here is as a entire procurement those can be useful, but primarily for purchasing application. The naming convention they are given as common options for payables and procurement. This is equal to EBS financials options. We'll go and see that. So search for the task called as common options for payables and procurement. Simply you can search for common options. Search for common options. Okay. So manage common options for payables and procurement. Click on the task. Click on go to task icon. So select business unit. For which business unit we want to configure these common options. ERP3 US business unit. So automatically system is taking the liability, prepayment and the discount taken account. The reason is if you load the data through spreadsheet, okay, if you load the data through spreadsheet, what happens, I mean like a rapid implementation approach. So one second. So earlier we just did the configuration through manual process only, so that instance got refreshed. So that is the reason I just completed this setups by using the rapid implementation. So here if you go to accounts, say which accounts your system is taking automatically, liability account, right? Nothing but your accounts payable account. Accounts payable account, right? So you copy this number and find in the spreadsheet. This is account. See why this account system is taking automatically. In case of manual configuration, we have to select. So the reason is when this account is provided within the spreadsheet, if you just provide account type as a liability, it won't default. Along with the liability, this account is selected as liability accounts payable. That means we are telling to the system to default this account in this field. The same way prepayment also. If you select when you are loading the sheet, if you just provide as a just liability account, if you provide as just liability, it will load. Along with the liability, we just given the combination of liability accounts payable. If you give the specification, then automatically system will take in this field automatically the combination. The same way wherever you see, all system is defaulting by following that information only. Okay, so here the next column classification, we have financial classification, that also taken as a accounts payable. So this is for other purpose. When you look at that account value, there you can see the purpose that any will be working when you do the kind of reconciliation cases that can be used. Okay, but this is only the point. When you are loading, if you provide this information along with the account type liability, if you say accounts payable, automatically system will just default when we perform the configuration. Okay, that logic and all just basically the finance guys uses, since they ideally load these values into the system. Fine. Here liability account and prepayment account. Liability account where we can use when you create payables invoices, and prepayment account when you give the advance to the supplier, discount taken when you give the discount, when you get the discount, when you make the payment. You just provide other mandatory accounts also, conversion related variance gain loss accounts. What you could do is copy and paste the same accounts, or you can select the relevant accounts. Just for testing, you can use any account. Here also you can provide the realized gain and loss accounts when you are dealing with the foreign currency transactions. So these, because of variance time to time, you may get gain or loss when you make the payment. These are related to payment. So you can provide the mandate information, and that's all. Okay, since we created this configuration, this business unit and all, with a rapid implementation approach, system is defaulting, or else select the relevant accounts. Liability account means accounts payable account, prepayment means prepayment only. Discount based on the label name, you can select the relevant account. Okay, so this information would be enough to complete these common options. So save and close. Fine. Let me close the sheet. Yeah. Fine. Set up receiving options. Okay. So when you, if you want to perform the activity called as based on your purchase orders, if you want to create the receipt, we create a receipts in inventory, but all those receipts are miscellaneous, right? Miscellaneous receipt we created. If you want to create the receipt against the purchase order, we have to complete this receiving options. Fine, we'll go to the receiving options, search for the task called as receiving options. Go to receiving options. That we call as receiving parameters. Okay, both are same. Just in case of EBS, we call as receiving options, but here the naming convention they given receiving parameters. Set receiving parameters. Okay, manage receiving parameters. Click on go to task icon. Select our inventory organization. For all child inventory organizations, we have to set up this. For item master, not required because we never receive the material into item master inventory organization. Item master organization only for item definition and just to maintain those definitions for associations, etc. So we have to set receiving parameters only for child organizations. The same you can see only child organizations. So we'll test the different scenarios with this dollars inventory. So we'll set for dollars. Select ERP3 dollars. And let's set mandatory information. So required. Receipt days exceed action. So with these scenarios, we'll just we'll test it. But for now, you can set as none. Even we are going to receive the material early or delay, no action is required from system. Over receipt action. If you receive the quantity more than what you ordered, in that case also no action is required from system. Let's set as a none. Then when we are testing the scenarios, we'll change the values. Okay, and we'll take the case and we'll be testing receipt routing method. I'm selecting standard. We'll discuss about these differences also. What is the meaning of it when you are going to perform the transaction? What is the meaning of direct delivery, inspection required, standard receipt? The same meaning it has how we have in EBS. But if somebody is new to this, For them, just we'll go through these details also when we perform the transactions. For now, I'm just selecting any one of the value. Receipt routing, I'm selecting standard receipt. The same way when you create the receipt, when you receive the material into this inventory organization, to receive the material into this inventory organization, we'll create the receipt. So how you want to create the receipt number, manual number or automatic? Say automatic. So or if it is automatic, that should be number only. And what should be the next number? Next number means the first number when you create the receipt. Say we can start with 1. And RMA, return material authorization. When you do the sales returns, will just get the material from the our customers. When you receive that sales returns into inventory, which receipt routing method you want to follow? Say standard. We will discuss before we see the result of this receipt routing methods, how it works in the system. We'll discuss and do, then only we'll perform. Okay, for now, just as a part of setup, select these values. Standard receipt. Fine. We given the specifications. Okay, based on the features, concepts, what will be working, we'll be setting the required controls and will be working. But as a part of the setup, what are the basic information that we can provide? That's enough. Okay, we just given required information, say save and close. Done. Now we'll go and create the procurement agent. So without creating the procurement agent, you cannot perform any transactions within the purchasing application. Even you cannot create supplier also. We'll see what sort of controls are applicable for procurement agent definition. So go to procurement agent, search for procurement agent. In case of EBS, we call as buyer definition. But when I talk about buyer definition in EBS, we know very well. We'll create employee, we'll add employee in the buyer list. That's all. But here, it's different. For which documents this procurement agent required permissions, and there is other information also which you have to specify. We'll go through it. Task name is manage procurement agents. So click on go to task icon. Okay. Now we can make employee user only as a procurement agent. ERP tree is employee user. We are going to convert ERP tree as a procurement agent. Nothing but buyer as per EBS. Okay. So just click on create to create procurement agent. So in EBS, just we add employee as a buyer. Just we'll add into the list. But here, so these are the different access. You can decide which access you want to give to which procurement agent. We'll see those. So select procurement BU. You want to make our user or our employee as a procurement agent for which BU? ERP to US BU. So we want to make whom as a procurement agent for this BU? ERP tree. You can find the value here if the user is employee user only. Okay, we may just set default regulation BU also, so that when this agent is going to create any documents, this BUs will get defaulted. And default printer. When I talk about printer, in case of EBS, like the printer installation will be done by DBA or anyone else who are expertised on that technical guy, or ideally DBA will do it. But in Fusion, it is not possible from our side to do the printer related configuration. The printer configuration need to be done by Oracle DBA team. So for printer installation or printer configuration within the cloud environment, we have to raise SR to Oracle. They'll ask few details related to our printer, the URL, etc., etc. All the details they'll be asking. Once you provide it, they do the required configuration. Then that printer value would be available here. So when you are going to print any documents, you can select and you can print. That's how it works. So from our side, we cannot do any printer configuration. The printer configuration, we have to raise SR to Oracle. They'll ask some inputs, information. We have to provide accordingly. They do the configuration. So since this is a vision instance, you don't find any value also. For just some as a sample data also, they didn't provide anything. No printer installation is done in this environment. Okay, done. So now we are trying to make ERP tree as a procurement agent, nothing but buyer. So being a buyer, what this procurement agent can do? So these are the different areas. Access can be given to the buyer, procurement agent, manage requisitions, manage purchase orders, manage purchase agreements, manage negotiation. This negotiation, sourcing, catalog content, all these, because it's a completely not only just for purchasing, for entire procurement. Okay, for other module related, so areas of tasks also this agent can perform. Okay, so requisitions, purchase orders, and purchase agreements, and if you want to allow this same agent to involve in the negotiation process, yes, and sourcing related programs, so as a sourcing module related activities, and the catalog management, and the supplier qualifications, this is a separate module again. So approval management, list entries, and analyze spend, this is just to for reporting purpose, analysis purpose, this can be used. So these are the different areas procurement agent access can be controlled. Now we want to give access to which documents or which areas of work we want to allow this ERP tree to have access, that we can decide. By default, whenever you create the procurement agent, system will enable allowed checkbox for all these actions. But as per our requirement, we have to set up. Say for example, you are going to allow this procurement agent only for purchase orders. Then in that case, we can disable all these other access privileges so that this agent can perform only procurement purchase orders, that too only for this procurement BU, not for other BUs. Okay, only for this BUs. So you are allowing this procurement agent to create the purchase orders. Yes. If you enable, yes, that is possible. And the same procurement agent, if you want to allow to have access to other agent documents who are belongs to same procurement BU. So here you can set that option. Access to other agent documents. Access to other agent documents. Now we are giving access to this ERP tree procurement agent for this BU related, say, purchase orders. So this by default, this agent can see the documents which are created by the agent ERP tree only. Okay, the documents which are created by ERP tree agent can be accessed and managed by same agent. But if you want to allow this ERP tree to have access to any other agent related documents who are creating the documents for the same business unit, you can set the required options here. If you want to allow this agent ERP2 to view other agent related purchase orders which are created within this ERP3 US business unit, you can select value as a view. That means read only access. The ERP3 can see other agent documents which are belongs to same business unit. If you specify modify, that means the documents which are created by other agents can be modified by this ERP tree agent. Modification in the sense just the documents within the document, what are the data we have, the data can be modified by this agent. And if you select the value as full means this agent can see the view the document, can modify. Apart from that, this agent can perform the actions on the document. On the purchase order, this agent can take actions like approval, some cancel, or etc. etc. What are the different actions we can perform on the purchase order, like placing on hold, etc. All these actions Full means it will provide additional privileges like actions. Okay, if you select view, this agent can access other agent documents also. And modify means within the document, even the document is prepared by other agent, since you are giving the permissions to this agent for other agent related documents to modify privileges, this agent will be able to modify any other agent documents if those agents also belongs to same procurement BU. And full means along with the modification, the action also can be taken on those documents. So this is how you can specify based on the business need. So this is how we have to create the procurement agent. Remember, the procurement agent you can create if the user is employee user. You can convert employee user as a procurement agent. And one more point, only procurement agent can create the supplier definition. Supplier complete definition can be created by agent only. Okay, procurement agent only can create. Reason, here we have a privilege, manage suppliers. If you disable this checkbox, even this ERP tree is the procurement agent. Even if you provide the required privileges to this agent, the agent cannot create the supplier. Reason, the procurement agent definition itself, we are setting the restriction. We are not allowing to manage the supplier's information. So here is the control. Done. Say save and close. So this is how you can create. If one agent is going to work for multiple business units, you have to create the same agent as a procurement agent for multiple BUs. Okay, that's how it works. Fine. So we have to create the procurement agent. We done. We created. Now we have to assign the supplier role to the user. We have to assign the role called as supplier manager. Okay, go to security console and assign the role to our user. See here what happens is, within this navigator, okay, you can see the section called as procurement. Once you add that role, system will be adding supplier task under procurement. Okay, so to get access to that supplier task within the navigator, we are going to add the role called as supplier manager to our user. Go to security console. Go to users. Our username is ERP tree. Find user and click on username. Assign additional role called as supplier manager. So click on edit. Say add role. Supplier manager. Okay, assign supplier manager role to our user. Select, say assign, say okay, save and close. And along with that, assign one more role called as buyer role also. So since we created this user as a, or employee as a procurement agent, just assign the role called as buyer. Done. So save and close. Okay, so this is just visual instance. Within this instance, even if you are not going to set supplier numbering, there won't be an issue. But when you are dealing with a fresh instance, it is a mandatory setup. Without setting the supplier numbering, you cannot create the supplier. But in this environment, you can do. Reason, already the supplier numbering is specified. Okay, we'll go and see that. So before you go and create the supplier, you have to set up the supplier numbering. In case of EBS, we can find that supplier numbering in payable system setup. Right, in the payable system setup, you can go and set the numbering. Whether you need manual numbering or automatic numbering, you can select that option and you can specify. Here the option is automatic, so we'll see how to set it up. Okay, this is a task name. Specify supplier numbering. Specify supplier numbering. This works at instance level. For entire instance, the same number system will use. If you see here, the number already specified. The next supplier number is going to be 1365. Please don't change this number when you are practicing also, just for information. You just remember. So when you are working on the fresh instance, without setting this number, you cannot create the supplier. In this environment, you don't need to do this. Already this configuration is done. You don't change this number to some number. I mean, you don't update this number. It may impact the duplication. If I go and set this number to maybe 1000, with 1000 supplier might be existed. So that will create some issues when somebody is going to create the suppliers. It says so number already exists, you have to use a different number, but system will be deriving the number based on the setup. That is the reason you don't change this number generation. Okay, leave as it is in this environment. When you are working for client instance, you may talk to the client what numbering they want to follow, or else ideally you may start from one or some different number. Okay, so it's a mandatory you have to set in the fresh instance. So in this vision or practice instance, you can ignore this setup, but remember this is a mandatory when you deal with a fresh instance. Done. Now supplier creation. So when I talk about supplier creation, in case of EBS, we create the supplier header, right? Header information and site. And site will assign to operating unit. Here the header only in the Fusion we are calling as profile. We are calling as profile. So in case of EBS, when you create the site, as a part of site only we provide the address. But in Fusion, so first we'll create the address. Against the address, we'll provide the site name. That's all. Then site will assign to specific operating unit in EBS, here to specific business unit. Okay, when we assign this site to specific business unit, again the procurement agent will come into the system. We'll have some control on that process and all we'll discuss. But for now, simple point is, so first we'll create the profile, supplier profile, nothing but supplier header as per EBS, and address. After creating the address, against the address we'll create the site, then the site will assign to specific business unit. Okay, we'll go through these points. If user is implementation user, if user is only implementation user, not employee user, not procurement agent, still implementation user can create supplier profile and the supplier address. Remember this. Okay, implementation user can create profile and address, but implementation user cannot create supplier site and supplier site assignments. That can be done by only procurement agent. If you want to create the procurement agent should be employee user. That means employee user who is converted as a procurement agent, that user only can create the supplier site and the site assignment. That is the reason simply you can say supplier definition can be done by only procurement agent. Okay, so this is a point we have to understand. First we'll see how to create the supplier through manual process, After completing that, we'll see the process of loading the suppliers into purchasing by following the FBDA process, file based data import. We tested item loading process. A similar process we can follow for supplier conversion also. We'll see that. First we'll see how to create the supplier through manual process. So we assign the role to our current user, right? We'll go and verify this user got access to the task called as supplier creation. Go to navigator. So it's not reflecting. We'll just sign out and sign in and we'll check. Still, after checking this also, if you don't see, you can run the LDAP job. Let's go to navigator. Yeah, now it's reflecting. This is coming here because of the role which we assigned. Fine. Just click on suppliers. Go to task list. Say create supplier. Just click on create supplier. So you can provide the name as, we'll just, for easy identification, we'll create everything as ERP tree only. So ERP tree supplier 1. So business relationship. Here you can find two values. One is prospective supplier, other one is spend authorized. Okay. So for the negotiations and all, you can have a supplier definition as a prospective supplier. If you create any supplier as a prospective supplier, that supplier you cannot use to create the purchase orders and do invoices and the payables. That means with whom you are in the negotiation process to take that supplier as approved supplier, that suppliers you can create, means prospective supplier. So name itself, it says it's a prospective, not real supplier. So in that case you can select prospective. Otherwise, if you want to have a transactions with the system with this one specific supplier, you have to select as a spent authorized. I'll take you through the process how to create prospective and how to convert prospective as a spent authorized. Also, that is simple process. But for now, we'll create supplier which we can use to create the transactions. Okay, spent authorized means you can say with which supplier we are dealing for purchases, and we have a authorization to spend in the sense we'll purchase and will pay. Tax organization type. So this supplier falls under which classification of organizations, accordingly you can select. I am selecting as corporation. The rest of fields are completely optional. Just click on create. System will create the supplier profile which is equal to header, supplier header in EBS. Just click on create. Now whenever you click on create, system will verify the supplier numbering related setup is done or not. If the number setup is not completed, it won't allow you to create the supplier. In fact, it won't give the exact message also why system is not allowing to create. That is the reason we have to make sure that the number specification you have to complete before you start with this. Since this is a visual instance, already number specification is there, we are continuing with this setup. But in fresh instance, we have to complete that first. So system created profile, supplier profile. So by selecting spent authorized supplier name, this is a number system taken from that setup. Tax organization type is corporate, done. So here we have a different tabs. You may set some default information. Okay. So ignore it. This level not required. Now we'll just move on to addresses. Click on addresses tab. We have to create the supplier address. Okay. Click on create. You can provide any test here to complete the definition. I'll say ERP3 address. And the address belongs to which country? Say United States. Already we discussed about address, country address structures. By following the structure, here we have to provide the information. Just select postal code, rest system will default. City, state and county system is defaulting. What is the purpose of this address the supplier has? Say the purpose is to place the orders and to perform the remittance for payment purpose, even for RFQ, request for quotations and all. So what purpose the supplier has this address that you can specify. And when you create the supplier, ideally if you want to just create invoice and if you want to process the payment against that site or address level, you have to set the default payment method. Set payment method as a default. I'm just selecting check as a default payment method for this address. Done. So I provided address information and what purpose this address we are specifying. When you are going to send the payment to this address, which is our preferable payment method that we are selecting as a default payment method for this address. Say save and close. Now against this address we have to create the site. Okay, we have to create the site. So go to sites. Okay, if you are going to create the site from employee user, which user is classified as a procurement agent, then only you can see this create icon as enabled. If you are trying to do the same task from the implementation user, you could notice this icon, create icon, as grayed out. Okay, if you see any time this icon is grayed out, you have to understand something wrong with that user. The user may not be employee user. Even the user is employee user, the user may not be procurement agent. Okay, even procurement agent, the procurement agent may not have a permissions to create the suppliers. We have a access called as action called as manage suppliers. Even you may create ERP3 as a procurement agent. If you don't enable the checkbox for action called as manage supplier, that agent cannot create the sites. Fine. Just click on create. So we are going to create the site for this supplier. The site is belongs to which address? Select address. Okay, we select.
Lakshman, can you repeat the sentence that what are the role that we need to add to this user to perform this, to enable that action?
No, I didn't talk about role. Yes, we have a role. See, the point is very simple. So to create the supplier, first you have to create the employee user. Okay, you have employee user. Can you create a supplier definition? No. If that employee user has access to role called as supplier manager role. You have employee user. If you assign the role called as supplier manager, that employee user can create the supplier when if that employee user is already converted as a procurement agent. Okay, now the case is we have employee user.
Procurement agent is the responsibility.
Procurement agent is the privilege, not responsibility. Just now we created procurement agent. I'm not sure whether you were attending that session or not. Just now we created procurement agent, right? So before we create this, before this we created procurement agent.
Okay, I missed that part, sorry.
Okay. In EBS we add employee in the buyers list, right? Like create buyer.
Yeah.
In the same way here we created procurement agent. We discussed also what are the different privileges the agent is required, that we discussed. That point I was referring.
Okay.
Okay, you may just go through this video, and if you have any questions, definitely we can discuss. Yeah. So the point what I was addressing is, you have employee user, and employee user you convert it as a procurement agent, and you just assign the role called as supplier manager role to that user. Even you do this, system may not allow you to create the supplier. The reason is, when you create the procurement agent, if you don't enable manage suppliers, in that case, even these all are meeting. User is employee user is procurement agent, user has access to supplier manager. Still that user may not be able to create the supplier. The reason is, the procurement agent definition time that we have a different privileges there. If you don't give the permission as a manage suppliers, it won't work. Okay, these are the points we have to consider for supplier creation. So we selected address. The same address system is defaulting the site name. We can change the name. I'm just giving the site name as a site1. Okay, and you can just click on save. Once you click on save, system will enable all these tabs. Now you can see all the tabs are grayed out. And click on save. Done. And what you can do is, you can go to payments and set this as a default payment method check, because we'll be using the same supplier to create the invoice and the payment, to process the payment and the payables against our POs and receipts. For that reason, we'll be testing P2P cycle also with the same supplier. So make sure that you are selecting default payment method for the site. Done. And go to invoicing tab. Even when you create invoice also with this, system will look for default invoice currency and the payment currency. Now already in the procurement functions, we given the currency, default currency for the BU, right? So now we are just giving the same information for invoice and payment purpose. So we just given the required information. Here we have a tabs related to purchasing and receiving. So whatever just we given in the receiving control, receiving parameters, the same it will default here. Okay, fine. Now we have to assign the site to business unit. If you click on auto create assignments, what system will do is, this site will be assigned to business unit, for which business unit this ERP tree is acting as a procurement agent. Now we know very well, one site can be assigned to multiple operating units in EBS. Same applicable in the Fusion. One site we can assign to multiple business units. But here, if this user is acting as a procurement agent for how many BUs, only to those BUs only this site can be assigned, not to other BUs. Say for example, you have US BU and India BU. Now you created site 1. So the site 1 we are going to assign to BU. When we are assigning, system will verify who is assigning. Who is assigning? ERP tree is assigning. So ERP tree is procurement agent for which BU it will verify. Say for example, ERP tree we created as a procurement agent for US BU. When you create the procurement agent, we select the BU, right? So we created procurement agent by selecting the US BU. So now system will allow to assign only the site 1 to US BU only. If ERP tree is trying to assign the site 1 to India business unit, the India business unit value won't be displayed. The reason, the ERP tree is acting as a procurement agent for US BU only. Okay, so this is a point we have to understand. So now if you want to allow the ERP tree to assign the site 1 to India BU, what we have to do? you have to create same ERP tree as a procurement agent for India BU also. If you want to allow this ERP tree to assign this one site to 10 business units, you have to make this ERP tree as a procurement agent for 10 BUs. This is how it works. Okay. By default, we cannot assign one site to multiple business units if the user is not a procurement agent for all those BUs. For how many BUs the user is acting or the employee is acting as a procurement BU agent, for only those BUs the site can be assigned. Okay, the site can be assigned. If you directly click on auto create assignment, system will verify this user is acting as a procurement agent for how many BUs. For those BUs this site will be assigned, otherwise manually also you can do it. Click on add. Now just look at these terms. Here is the procurement BU and client BU. Client BU is nothing but requisition BU. Okay, so requisition against this site. Okay, if you are when you are creating the requisition, you can select the supplier information also, right? So client BU is nothing but requisition BU. Bill to BU in the sense, so you will be creating the invoice against which BU. So that specification, ideally that client to BU and bill to BU would be same. Just select client to BU, ERP tree USBC. You are able to find only one business unit. That is the reason. The reason is ERP tree is acting as a procurement agent only for this BU. Okay, the reason is this ERP tree is created as a procurement agent for only this BU. So select, system will default same client to BU as a bill to BU. So other details, in case of EBS, when you create supplier site, automatically system will default to liability account, prepayment account, whatever the accounts are available in the financial options. In Fusion equal to financial options, what we have? Common options. We given the, and within the common options we given the liability account, prepayment account and other accounts, but system is not defaulting here. Okay, they made these are optional here. They made these are optional. In case of EBS, supplier site level liability account, prepayment accounts all are mandatory. That's the reason system will default, and whenever you create the invoices and all, system will derive from here only, but here they made as an optional. Okay, the same distribution set and all you can specify which will be defaulted. Fine. And you may set your default ship to location and bill to location for this site. We'll go and set, we'll set Dallas as a default ship to location. Which information we have, we'll just go and check. Is not blank, is not blank. If you select this, it has to provide complete list of values which are available. Okay, these are the addresses are available. You can go with any one of the address. Okay, fine. Just we are specifying ship to and bill to location for this supplier site. That means when you're dealing with this supplier site, that supplier has to ship the material to this headquarters, and the bill also supplier has to send to headquarters. Then these are the specifications we have to give. Then say save and close. Okay, we'll just look at the how to create contacts for supplier and all, but not required now. So we created profile and we created address. Against address we created site. Address we created against that address we created site. And if you click on edit, you can see the site is assigned to specific business unit. So this is how just we created supplier. Done. The same process which we followed manually, like through manual process we created supplier. Now the same process how to execute, I mean the same data how we can get into the application by following the FPDA process, how to perform the supplier conversion, that we'll see in tomorrow's session. After testing that, we'll proceed with how to create the PO tab, what is the purpose, what are the different approvals we have, all we'll discuss and do it. Okay, maybe like this supplier conversions. Okay, 2 more sessions we can complete the setups, then we'll talk about what are the features we have within the purchasing and we'll start working on it. We'll just work on with PO and inventory integrations, and we'll cover whatever left in the inventory, and we'll focus on purchasing application. Once we're done with purchasing, or else along with the purchasing we complete payables configuration also, so that we can test complete P2P cycle right from requisition to till we make the payment and all. We'll be covering all these points. Okay, and any questions on today's session, please? Fine, no questions. So we'll connect tomorrow. Yeah.
Lakshman, one last question. Maybe it is overall, what is the difference when you compare to EBS in basic setups in Fusion when you compare to EBS?
Okay. Basic setups. If you talk about basic setups comparison, here only we have a list of basic setups. So in case of EBS, so we don't have these two setups separately. Procurement, business function, requisition function. Equal to these two, we have a purchasing options. Done. And here we are calling as common option for payables and procurement. There we call it as financial options. Yes, in EBS also we set the receiving parameters, and their procurement agent we don't call as procurement agent, we call as buyer creation. And in case of EBS, you no need to assign this numbering. You no need to assign this role to user. So supplier related privileges will have as a part of menu only. From purchase
Right.
payables you can find within the menu only, that is a part of menu, but here it's an additional role. And number specification in EBS you can find within the setup called as payables payable system setup. In case of EBS release 12, I'm referring EBS release 12. If you talk about EBS 11i, within the 11i supplier number you can find within the financial options. Okay, in EBS 11i you can find within the financial options. EBS release 12, they removed from the financial options, they given that setup as a separate option called as payable system setup. But in Fusion, this is separate task. You have to set separately in the different page. And when I talk about this number supplier creation, in EBS we call as header, and after that site will create directly along with address, but here the definition wise they differentiated. And when I talk about site assignments, who is assigning the site to the business unit, system will verify. In EBS, no, anyone can create suppliers who has access to that responsibility, which responsibility has access to menu called as supplier definition, and can be, if you have access to operating, you can assign. System won't verify so which buyer is creating, which buyer is assigning to sites. This kind of controls we don't have. Other point also here, when you compare with EBS, the procurement agent, how we created here, how we create in EBS as a buyer, it's a huge difference. There are no controls we can set, just you have to add employee in the buyers list, that's all. You cannot specify that buyer can have access to requisitions or purchase orders, or supplier definition can be possible or not, other agent documents can be accessed or not. All those controls we don't have. But here procurement agent creation level, we have a different variety of actions, permissions you can specify. So other things on the PO tab, in Fusion only you have to configure that. In EBS the accounts and all will be providing in the purchasing options. In the receiving parameters will provide the required accounts, which accounts required to run the process of payables, purchasing. When you create the requisition and purchase order, the PO charge accounts, variance accounts, all accounts whatever required, those you can provide as a part of these options only, purchasing options and receiving options or receiving parameters. But here we configure these options and receiving options parameters also. Nowhere we provided accounts. That's how they're given in the Fusion. So those accounts we have to set by using the PO tab only. That anyway we will discuss. And when it comes to approvals, so here we can set variety of approvals. We'll see. Still, this is a due to complete, right? So we'll
Yeah.
discuss. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks. Fine. Any other questions from anyone, please? Fine. No questions. So don't think just we just completed the basic level setups, and based on the concept, wherever we have to change some values, what are the other points we have to understand, we'll go through. Now we are trying to set up payables or purchasing ready, which are to allow the basic transaction. Then based on the scenarios, we'll just go back to this receiving parameters, we'll go back to this procurement business functions, we'll go back to this payable related if required to those options, and we'll set up required information accordingly. We'll be testing the scenarios. Okay, consider these are the very basic, with very basic information we are completing the basic setups. That's all. Done. If no questions, we can wind up for today. In tomorrow's session, what we'll see, how to load the suppliers information. We'll see that. After that, we'll proceed on other setups. Maybe just 2 more sessions we require to complete, because here we'll be spending some time. We have to understand how to download that spreadsheets and how to load, convert, and we'll look into that process. Even we have to understand this tab also detail level, and yes, approvals also we have to understand more detail level. So these are the 3 very key tasks which will be performing. When you talk about PO tab, there are multiple tasks which you have to perform, but I just written as a one task here, but it has a some many subtasks also. We'll discuss and do it. So this, when you are working on this PO tab, you can just feel this is very similar or same as EBS SLA. Okay.
What about the costing, Lakshman?
Yeah, costing and all we cover. The cost accounting and receipt accounting, we will touch that concept once we start with order management. Okay, we'll cover once we start with the order management. We'll cover that cost accounting and the receipt accounting. Yeah, when you are configuring order management, we have to do the costing related setups also, so that system will derive the cost. Then if you go and configure that cost accounting, it will generate accounting. Same time we'll do the configuration for receipt accounting, where system will trigger the accounting for receipts which we create in the inventory. We'll see. Fine. So that's all for today. We'll connect tomorrow and we'll continue from here. Okay. Thank you all. Have a good day and good night.